Hey, sports card fans, it's John Wade Boggs fan. Hope you're all doing well. I really enjoy doing these top 10 PSA vintage baseball card sales videos. I always find it interesting to see which cards sell in a given month and especially for what they sell for. So, for the month of January, for cards from the 1950s, there are a couple cool cards that made this month's top 10 list. For cards from the 1960s, there's a surprising card that lands at the number one spot. And for cards from the 1970s, the top four cards all sold for record high prices. So let's go take a look at the top 10 PSA vintage baseball card sales on eBay for cards from the 1950s, 60s, and 70s for January 2025. Okay, let's start off with the cards from the 1950s. At number 10, we have this 1953 Bowman Color Mickey Mantle in a PSA 7.5. This one sold on January 20th for $10,500. It was a best offer. The current VCP average price for a PSA 7.5 is $9,655. This sale here at $10,500 represents a new record high sale for a PSA 7.5. The previous high was $9,655 back in September of 2024 through BBCE. At number 9, we have this 1952 Topps Frank House, but the rarer grayback version in a PSA 2.5. This one sold on January 23rd for $13,100. It was an auction. There were 36 bids. The current VCP average price for a PSA 2.5 is $12,249. This sale here at $13,100 represents a new record high sale for a PSA 2.5 copy. The previous high was $11,398 back in July of 2024 through eBay. Now, in a PSA 2.5, there have only been 3 copies graded at that level. Only 24 cards have been graded higher than a PSA 2.5. At number 8, we have this 1952 Topps Jackie Robinson in a PSA 4.5. This one sold on January 19th for $13,278. It was an auction. There were 44 bids. The current VCP average price for a PSA 4.5 is $10,300. The record high sale was $19,800 back in August of 2022 through Heritage. At number 7, we have this 1954 Topps Hank Aaron in a PSA 6.5. This one sold on January 19th for $13,425. It was an auction. There were 39 bids. The current VCP average price for a PSA 6.5 is $11,308. The record high sale was $21,000 back in March of 2021 through eBay. Now, there were 3 other significant 1954 Topps Hank Aaron cards sold in January. One was a PSA 5.5 copy that sold on January 6th for $7,200. A PSA 5 copy sold on January 11th for $7,000. And then finally, a PSA 4.5 copy sold on January 20th for $6,901. At number 6, we have this 1955 Bowman Mickey Mantle in a PSA 8. This one sold on January 12th for $13,456. It was an auction. There were 77 bids. The current VCP average price for a PSA 8 is $12,843. The record high sale, though, was $21,600 back in February of 2023 through Heritage. At number 5, we have this 1951 Bowman Willie Mays in a PSA 7 off-center. This one sold on January 30th for $13,600. It was a best offer. The current VCP average price for a PSA 7 qualifier card is $9,300. The record high sale was $22,500 back in May of 2023 through eBay. Now, there were two other significant 1951 Bowman Willie Mays cards that sold in January. One was a PSA 5 miscut, sold on January 4th for $8,500, and then a PSA 3 copy sold on January 12th for $7,847. At number 4, we have this 1954 Wilson Franks Ted Williams in a PSA 5. This one sold on January 2nd for $23,000. It was a best offer. The current VCP average price for a PSA 5 is $19,800. This sale here at $23,000 represents a new record high sale for a PSA 5 copy. The previous high was $19,800 back in May of 2024 through Heritage. At number 3, we have this 1959 Topps Hank Aaron in a PSA 9. This one sold on January 27th for $25,000. It was a buy it now. The current VCP average price for a PSA 9 is $32,416. The record high sale, though, was $55,152 back in April of 2024 through SCP auctions. There have been 27 copies graded a PSA 9. Only one has been graded a PSA 10. At number 2, we have this 1952 Topps Mickey Mantle in a PSA Authentic Altered condition. This one sold on January 6th for $36,615. It was an auction. There were 110 bids. The current VCP average price for an authentic Mickey Mantle is $32,704. The record high sale, though, was $81,600 back in May of 2023 through Golden. And at number 1 for the 1950s, we have this 1952 Topps Willie Mays in a PSA 7. This one sold on January 24th for $37,499. It was a best offer. The current VCP average price for a PSA 7 is $35,600. The record high sale was $49,500 back in May of 2023 through eBay. Now, there was one other significant 1952 Topps Willie Mays sale in January. It was a PSA 4.5 copy that sold on January 11th for $7,103. All right, on to the top 10 from the 1960s. At number 10, we have this 1961 Topps Mickey Mantle in a PSA 8. This one sold on January 19th for $4,810. It was an auction. There were 44 bids. The current VCP average price for a PSA 8 is $4,243. The record high sale was $10,025 back in December of 2022 through SCP auctions. Now, there were two other significant 1961 Topps Mickey Mantle sales in January. Another PSA 8 copy that sold on January 23rd for $4,275, and another PSA 8 sold on January 27th for $4,138. At number 9, we have this 1963 Topps Mickey Mantle in a PSA 8. This one sold on January 19th for $5,100. It was an auction. There were 37 bids. The current VCP average price for a PSA 8 is $4,883. The record high sale was $14,700 back in March of 2023 through eBay. At number 8, we have this 1961 Topps Billy Williams in a PSA 9. This one sold on January 19th for $5,500. It was a best offer. The current VCP average price for a PSA 9 is $4,870. The record high sale was $7,800 back in August of 2022 through REA. At number 7, we have this 1960 Topps Stan Musial in a PSA 9. This one sold on January 11th for $5,500. It was a buy it now. The current VCP average price for a PSA 9 is $12,000, and that's the record high sale. However, that one sold in May of 2024 through eBay, but that sale seems to be a bit of an outlier, as the previous sale and sales before that were in the $4,680 and high 3,000s. So the sale here at $5,500 is not outside of previous sales, but when you look at the record high sale of $12,000, it looks like this one was bought at a bargain, but in reality, the sale in May of 2024 through eBay may have been an outlier. Now, in a PSA 9, there have been 38 cards graded at that level. There have been no PSA 10s. At number 6, we have this 1963 Topps Pete Rose rookie card in a PSA 7.5. This one sold on January 14th for $8,300. It was a best offer. Current VCP average price for a PSA 7.5 is $7,823. The record high sale was $9,900 back in March of 2021 through REA. Now, there were 3 other significant 1963 Topps Pete Rose card sales in January, all of them PSA 7 copies. The first one sold on January 27th for $4,480. Another copy sold on January 19th for $4,300. And finally, the third copy sold on January 26th for $4,100. At number 5, we have this 1968 Topps Nolan Ryan in a PSA 8. This one sold on January 2nd for $8,665. It was an auction. There were 43 bids. The current VCP average price for a PSA 8 is $8,766. Now, what's interesting is the record high sale for a PSA 8 is a card that sold just 9 days later on memory lane for $13,348. There was also one other significant 1968 Topps Nolan Ryan sale in January. This one, a PSA 8 copy, sold on January 28th for $8,556. At number 5, we have this 1962 Topps Ernie Banks in a PSA 9. This one sold on January 17th for $8,800. It was a best offer. The current VCP average price for a PSA 9 is $6,432. The record high sale was $12,535 back in September of 2022 through memory lane. Now, there have been 22 copies graded a PSA 9. None have been graded a PSA 10. At number 3, we have this 1965 Topps Pete Rose in a PSA 9. This one sold on January 19th for $9,434. It was an auction. There were 45 bids. The current VCP average price for a PSA 9 is $9,205. The record high sale was $18,368 back in December of 2022 through SCP auctions. There have been 67 copies graded a PSA 9. Only 2 have been graded a PSA 10. At number 2, we have this 1965 Topps Mickey Mantle in a PSA 8.5. This one sold on January 19th for $12,000. It was an auction. There were 38 bids. The current VCP average price for a PSA 8.5 is $9,601. This sale here at $12,000 represents a new record high sale for a PSA 8.5. The previous high was $11,100 back in April of 2022 through REA. There have been 36 copies graded a PSA 8.5, 56 have been graded a PSA 9, none have been graded a PSA 10. Now, there was one other significant 1965 Topps Mickey Mantle sale in January. This one, a PSA 8 copy, sold on January 20th for $5,375. And the number one sale for the 1960s is this 1962 Topps Lou Brock rookie card in a PSA 9. This one sold on January 19th for $15,400. It was an auction. There were 42 bids. The current VCP average price for a PSA 9 is $16,800. The record high sale, though, was $19,297 back in February of 2022 through Memory Lane. There have been 31 copies graded a PSA 9. Only 2 have been graded a PSA 10. On to the cards from the 1970s. At number 10, we have this 1971 Topps Johnny Bench in a PSA 8. This one sold on January 26th for $2,125. It was an auction. There were 39 bids. The current VCP average price for a PSA 8 is $2,033. The record high sale was $3,758 back in February of 2021 through a PWCC listing on eBay. At number 9, we have this 1971 O-Pee-Chee Nolan Ryan in a PSA 8. This one sold on January 9th for $2,150. It was a best offer. The current VCP average price for a PSA 8 is $2,443. The record high sale was $2,550 back in May of 2024 through PWCC. There have been 35 copies graded a PSA 8. 7 have been graded a PSA 9. Only 2 have been graded a PSA 10. At number 8, we have this 1979 Topps Ozzie Smith in a PSA 9. This one sold on January 30th for $2,300. It was a best offer. The current VCP average price for a PSA 9 is $2,360. The record high sale, though, was $15,600 back in August of 2022 through PWCC. There have been 415 copies graded a PSA 9. There have only been 5 graded a PSA 10. At number 7, we have this 1979 TCMA Ogden A's Ricky Henderson minor league card in a PSA 10. This one sold on January 16th for $2,750. It was a best offer. The current VCP average price for a PSA 10 is $1,869. The record high sale was $5,000 back in February of 2021 through eBay. There have been 476 copies graded a PSA 9. This one here is one of only 41 that have been graded a PSA 10. At number 6, we have this 1970 Topps Nolan Ryan in a PSA 8.5. This one sold on January 16th for $2,803. It was an auction. There were 34 bids. The current VCP average price for a PSA 8.5 is $2,663. The record high sale was $2,996 back in May of 2023 through eBay. At number 5, we have this 1971 Topps Reggie Jackson in a PSA 8. This one sold on January 26th for $3,284. It was an auction. There were 46 bids. The current VCP average price for a PSA 8 is $2,519. What's interesting is that the record high sale for a PSA 8 took place one day earlier on January 25th of this year through Heritage and sold for $3,904. There have been 169 copies graded a PSA 8, 11 have been graded a PSA 9, and none have been graded a PSA 10. At number 4, we have this 1975 Topps Ellie Hendricks in a PSA 10. This one sold on January 29th for $3,383. It was an auction. There were 34 bids. The current VCP average price for a PSA 10 is $3,383 and represents a new record high sale for a PSA 10 copy. The previous high was only $407 back in June of 2020 through eBay. There have been 60 copies graded a PSA 9. Only 3 have been graded a PSA 10. At number 3, we have this 1971 Bob Grich in a PSA 9. This one sold on January 31st for $3,999. It was a buy it now. The current VCP average price for a PSA 9 is $3,294. This sale here at $3,999 would represent a new record high sale for a PSA 9 copy. The previous high was $3,667 back in June of 2021 through a PWCC listing on eBay. There have been 10 copies graded a PSA 9. There have only been 1 graded a PSA 10. At number 2, we have this 1979 Topps Dave LaRoche in a PSA 10. This one sold on January 2nd for $4,000. It was a best offer. The current VCP average price for a PSA 10 is this sale at $4,000, and technically it represents a new record high sale, as this is the first and only copy to have received a PSA 10 grade. There have been 24 that have been graded a PSA 9. And at number 1 for the 1970s, we have this 1972 Topps Bill Mazeroski in a PSA 10. This one sold on January 13th for $6,950. It was a best offer. The current VCP average price for a PSA 10 is $5,040. This sale here at $6,950 represents a new record high sale for a PSA 10 copy. The previous high was $5,040 back in January of 2022 through Heritage. There have been 88 copies graded a PSA 9. Only 8 have been graded a PSA 10. Well, there you go, the top 10 PSA vintage baseball card sales on eBay for cards from the 1950s, 60s, and 70s for January 2025. As always, would love to know in the comments what you think about the cards that made this month's top 10 lists. And with that, that's all I have for you. So until next time, thanks for watching.